All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Anti-War Radio. I'm Scott Horton. And Jennifer Lynch is a staff attorney with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. She's the first guest on our show today. Welcome, Jennifer. How are you?
Thanks. I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you joining us today. And you in particular, but also everybody at EFF.org, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, you do such great work. But the one I want to talk to you about today was published on September 22nd. Newly released documents reveal Defense Department intelligence violations. And, I just love EFF and the ACLU and EPIC and even Judicial Watch and whoever is suing the government all day and making them at least disclose documents, Freedom of Information Act and discovery and these kinds of things. Y'all are my heroes. This is how we get the truth. And this is exactly the perfect example of what I'm talking about, the kinds of things that can be discovered by trudging through the official process to get these secrets revealed, and some pretty shocking stuff. So why don't you go ahead and tell us?
Well, so we issued a couple Freedom of Information Act requests to various intelligence agencies back in 2007 and 2009. And we were looking specifically in these FOIA requests for reports that were submitted to a body called the Intelligence Oversight Board. And this body was set up by executive order. It was supposed to be made up of civilians with top secret level security clearance to provide oversight to all of the various intelligence agencies. And so we were looking for reports that were submitted to the Intelligence Oversight Board from, for example, the Department of Defense, the CIA, the FBI, NSA, all of the intelligence agencies. And the records that we received from the agencies revealed quite a lot of violations that we never would have known about otherwise. We've written about them pretty extensively on our website. And then the documents that you were asking about most recently, Scott, these are records that had been re-released to us by the Department of Defense. So they were sent to us originally, but they were fully redacted, so we couldn't find any information about them. And then thanks to a Supreme Court case this spring, the Department of Defense was forced to go back and look over its previous redactions and get rid of some of them. And thanks to that court case, we received some new documents that told us some pretty interesting information about what the Department of Defense was doing in the last decade or so. For example, the records that we received showed that the Army issued NSLs for civilian telephone transactions and toll records. Now, the NSL statute only allows the FBI to issue NSLs, so these are secret sort of subpoenas that the FBI can send out, and they can request information on civilians and citizens in the United States, and there's a gag order that's associated with them. So any provider that receives an NSL can't even talk about it to anybody except their attorney. Mm-hmm. So
now that NSL statute, that's part of the Patriot Act, correct?
It is. Yeah, it was actually part of it was a statute before the Patriot Act, but the Patriot Act strengthened it and allowed it to be applied much more broadly.
And specifically here, as you're saying, I think this section of the Patriot Act, or even the law before that, has nothing to do with granting power to the Department of Defense whatsoever.
That's correct.
And does that include, well, because the National Security Agency is the military, kind of, but it's not directly under the Pentagon. How does that work?
Well, the NSA is part of the Department of Defense, but it's pretty much its own agency. So these NSLs that we heard about were issued by the Army, which is not part of the NSA at all. I mean, it's just your basic Army guys. Right. Yeah.
And now, so I think probably the most famous of these stories is something that we've heard of before, only now you have much more information about it, and that was the DOD investigating a meeting here in Austin at the University of Texas, a public conference.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. It was at the UT Law School, and it sounds like it was a conference on Islamic law. And it sounds like the military went to the conference. Some military lawyers went to the conference in plain clothes and didn't disclose that they were affiliated with the military. And then when some conference attendees figured out who they were and started questioning why they were there, the military decided to investigate those people.
And how far did that go? And how illegal was it? And
well,
who got held accountable?
That's a good question. We don't know so much about what happened to the special agents, the Army special agents, after the fact, other than the fact that a report was filed. But it's against the law for the military to be investigating citizens in the United States. The way our government is set up, there should be a pretty strong line between military and civilian investigations. And the Army has definitely crossed over that line multiple times in the last decade.
How many times that you know of?
I don't have exact numbers, but we have a number of reports on our website that we've written about, and we'll be working on a pretty extensive report on all of the violations this fall, so we hope to get that out in the spring.
Okay, now can you give us a couple other examples besides UT?
Well, the military was also investigating a bunch of peace organizations, and they were doing surveillance on the organizations and also sort of collecting information about people affiliated with the organizations. They were investigating Planned Parenthood and a white supremacist organization.
The Department of Defense was investigating Planned Parenthood?
Yeah. We don't really know too much more about it than that, but they were.
I mean, I just singled that one out, and I'd like to let you get back to the list there, but that just seemed, it's the one that no matter how far I twist my imagination, I can't figure out what in the world they could possibly be interested in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it's, you can't justify it, but it sort of makes sense that the Army might be interested in a group called Alaskans for Peace and Justice, or maybe some of the organizations that did, anti-recruiting stuff in the last decade. Like I said, you can't justify it, but you can sort of understand why the Army might be worried about it.
Right.
But Planned Parenthood,
yeah, peace and justice, that's bad news for the Pentagon. They don't want that.
Right.
But yeah, Planned Parenthood, I can't figure out what that could possibly be about, unless it was a particular person that they, were following from something else that was involved with them somehow or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Who knows? Or maybe it's like Mikey Weinstein talked about some of the, most fundamentalist Christians taking over in the Air Force and the highest reaches of the officer corps, and it was something like that, a religious thing using the DOD. No, I don't know. But so you guys are pursuing that and trying to find out more, I guess, right?
Yeah, we are. So we're still in the middle of our FOIA litigation. The next step is we'll be going to court this fall to challenge the redactions that all of the agencies used in all these records. So we'll be arguing that the agencies, they withheld too much information and should release more information to us.
Mm-hmm. And now part of this, too, is about joint missions where the FBI and the DOD work together. And I think you say that it's the DOD side that went undercover into a U.S. organization rather than the FBI side, which would have been legal. Is that?
Yeah, that's true. And who knows why that happened. This is the NCIS, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, was working with the FBI on a joint mission, and it's not really clear why the NCIS, the person affiliated with the NCIS went undercover when, like you said, the FBI could have done it if they'd gone through sort of proper legal channels. But yeah, the DOD, the Department of Defense, should not be getting involved in U.S. organizations' activities.
All right. Well, hold it right there. We got to go out and take this break. We'll be back with Jennifer Lynch from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF.org. Newly released documents reveal Defense Department intelligence violations. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the show. It's Anti-War Radio. I'm Scott Horton. I'm talking with Jennifer Lynch from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They're defending your rights in the digital world. Website is EFF.org, and we're talking about, one article that she wrote on September 22nd. Boy, are you productive. I'm looking through your archives here, and it's incredible, actually. This one is called Newly Released Documents Reveal Defense Department intelligence violations. And before the break, we were talking about this joint project where the FBI and the Army, I guess, were working together. The Naval Investigative Service was working together with the FBI, and how it was the military man who went undercover instead of the FBI guy. And I forgot exactly which point we left off at. I was going to go, maybe if you can tell us some more details about that, that'd be great. But I was going to wonder, why don't they outsource all this to the FBI? Why would they be involved in doing any of this? I guess I want to say because they could get in trouble over it, but maybe they can't, and maybe that's why they just do it if they feel like it, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. We don't know too much about what the operation was and why the Navy was involved at all. It says it was a joint counter-espionage operation, so there must have been some sort of military tie or link for the operation, and then some sort of domestic aspect to it as well. But yeah, it's unclear. I mean, a lot of the reports that we've received of these intelligence violations just show a lot of sloppiness within the government. There were some pretty bad acts, but there's just a lot of sloppiness, and that this could be one of those situations. It could be just, the two intelligence organizations were working together, and they just didn't think about the fact that it needed to be the FBI that looked into domestic activities. I mean, we saw that also in the other report that we wrote about with the Army issued NSLs. It appears that the Army was working with the FBI, and the FBI could have issued the NSLs, but the Army did. And the crazy thing about it, I think, is that according to the report, neither the Army unit nor the FBI field offices that, they were working together on this were aware that the request had to be made by the FBI. Now, that's just sloppiness. If the FBI doesn't know that they're the only branch of the government that can issue NSLs, how can we expect them to issue them appropriately?
Well, now the NSA can too, though, right?
NSA...
No, sorry.
Yeah, so the FBI has primary responsibility. I mean, the NSA has, you sort of wonder whether they're doing any NSLs at all, considering they can pretty much wiretap all of our conversations within the country. So, yeah, so they don't really need tools like NSLs. But yeah, the FBI can issue NSLs for a few distinct types of information. Transaction and toll records is one, financial records is another.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the thing is, too, if you think back, a year or two, Robert Mueller, the head of the FBI, admitted, I guess the Inspector General did a report, right, that said that they had been abusing the Patriot Act and their national security letter powers like crazy. I mean, NSL basically means a cop writes himself a warrant, right?
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, and nobody, the recipient of that warrant, whether it's your phone company or your bank, can't talk to anybody other than their lawyer about it, and they're gagged indefinitely. They can go back to the FBI on a yearly basis, on an annual basis, and say, can we talk about this now? But the FBI can unilaterally decide to continue the gag way after the investigation is concluded. So the national security letter statute is pretty incredible. And like you said, the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General issued 3 pretty amazing reports on the FBI's NSL use, and use of another tool called an exigent letter. And I really recommend your listeners to read those reports. They're a little dense, but it just serves as a reminder, just all of the crazy things that our government was doing over the last decade.
What's an exigent report? That sounds fun.
An exigent letter.
Or terrible, depending on whether you've had your coffee this morning or not.
An exigent letter was sort of like an NSL, except even worse. It was when the FBI called up, let's say, AT&T and said, I need the phone records of this number. I need to know every phone number that this one number called. And at some point in the future, I will give you the proper legal process to authorize this. So it was basically sort of like absolutely no authority at all. And sometimes the FBI would follow up with an NSL or a court order or a subpoena or something, and sometimes they wouldn't follow up with anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, It was a few weeks back. I forget which senators it was. Maybe Dick Durbin and somebody else talked about there's a secret interpretation of the Patriot Act that we don't know about really, but we know that it, according to them, it gives them 100 times the power we think it does.
Yeah, I think it was Senator Wyden. And we've actually issued a FOIA request for that memo and for other information on how the FBI and other intelligence agencies have been interpreting that section of the Patriot Act, Section 215. And we haven't received anything yet, so we'll see.
Well, I saw the new Kevin Smith movie, Red State. And there's a scene in there where I guess it's the ATF bosses. Oh, now, come on, all trials and all that's September 10th. Now we have the Patriot Act. We can do anything we want. That's what the executive branch thinks the Patriot Act says.
It's funny. We've been talking here about a scene from Bridesmaids. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but
afraid not.
It's actually pretty good, but there's a scene towards the end where they're trying to find the main character in the film, and one of the characters goes to her cop boyfriend and says, "We have to find her. Can you just track her on her cell phone?" And he, calls up the station and tracks her on her cell phone and locates her without any kind of a warrant or anything.
Yeah, and, just a friendly favor,
Yep, right. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in fact, there's a couple of other TV shows like that. Where basically the whole premise is somebody with unlimited authority and really good principles and great crime-solving techniques can use the complete information surveillance state to protect people and solve crimes and make everything okay all the time. My mom was watching one of those shows. I can't remember which one it was, but it was the premise of the show is there's a genius behind a panel of computers, and it's all up to him to save everybody. And he's a cop. Yeah, a cop genius.
That seems like the basis of the show 24.
Well, there they gotta, hang people upside down from their toes.
Well, that's
true.
Cold
water too, but all right. Well, now I wanted to ask you something else too. That I saw that you wrote about, which was it's a local issue, but it seemed a little bit ominous. Something about the Austin police were going to hunt down every open Wi-Fi connection in town.
That was not one of my posts. So
I'm sorry. I thought it was your archive that I was looking at there.
Yeah, we've recently updated our website, and there's been a little bit of some issues with our website, so that's
a bad example when the Electronic Frontier Foundation's website isn't working right now. Come on.
Yes, exactly.
No. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll let you off the hook for that one. But anyway, the good news was it was stopped by somebody. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. And now, so back to this military thing here. And there's, I guess, violating posse comitatus and the Insurrection Act. I don't know. Can you be more specific about what laws they're crossing here? Would that be it?
Yeah, it could be those. There's also some internal DoD guidelines about, when the military can get involved in U.S. domestic activities. If there is a link to a terrorist organization, that's sort of an exception to some of the rules on when the DoD can get involved or when the military can get involved. But it is pretty limited.
Yeah, I guess just to Branch Davidians. Well, although if the Delta Force doesn't exist, they can't really shoot people to death, can they?
That's true. I think that's true for a lot of, espionage groups.
Well, and see, the thing is here, too, I think kind of the subtext of your article here, even though they have been accountable to you guys in the form of, de-redacting these documents a bit, there really is no accountability for anyone in the military who violates this thing. And even though maybe we're not all members of a peace group that was targeted because of anti-recruitment efforts in the Northwest somewhere, still the precedent has said if they can get away with doing this to them, then they can get away with doing it to us. And it's just one more. Like these cops think. The Patriot Act means that those days are over, and now their power's unlimited. There's no accountability.
Yeah, it's definitely something we worry about here.
All right, well, you guys are the closest thing we've got, so please keep up your efforts. We really appreciate it, Jennifer.
Well, thanks very much.
Everybody, that's Jennifer Lynch from the Electronic Frontier Foundation.